Are you somebody looking to add just a little bit more polish onto your product photography work? I'm talking about that extra 5%. Well, I might have just what you need. Hey, I'm Steve, welcome back to Sharpen. Today, we're talking about the shadow boards from V-Flat World. You might be familiar with V-Flat World because they started off making, as you would guess it, V-Flats. Quick overview of the shadow board. The shadow board essentially is a gobo. What's a gobo? A gobo is something that goes between your light and your subject, in this case, the shadow board. And we wouldn't want to confuse a gobo for a cookie, because a cookie is actually something that goes into a light, whereas a gobo could be anything that you put in front of your light. In my own work, I'm always looking for ways to refine my set. That might be changing up the lighting, using multiple lights, combining soft and hard light, or introducing shadows. This is a product that I think is going to make that much easier. So let's dive in. This is not going to be a groundbreaking unboxing. There's no overhead camera. I don't think we need that for this. So these are going to help hold them up. I did get the set of 9, and all of these are individually wrapped so that way they're staying nice and tidy. Yeah, these are solid. If I recall from their marketing info, these are made out of the same material that the duo boards are made out of. So if you're familiar with duo boards, you know those are stiff. Okay, so in the box, I've got the 9 shadow boards, and we have 6 legs to hold each one of them up. So in this case, you could hold up a combination of 3, which I'm definitely curious to see what happens when you start layering these. So there's little slots behind these, and the board just tucks right into it. I mean, pretty straightforward. You can also take them and rotate them 90 degrees. So if you wanted to go horizontal with them, you could. Just as easily. Yeah, nice. So again, really straightforward. So let's just kind of flip through some of these just so you can see what they look like. So here we've got some little squares cut out, we've got some leaves, we got circles. I dig this one. I call this one tree. More leaves. Cathedral window, and I think they all have names on the site too. Another large window with an arched top and blinds, and then another window cut out. So immediately right off the bat, you might be saying, well, Steve, I could just make these myself. Yeah, you definitely could. I encourage you to. I have before in the past. It's kind of straightforward. You take a piece of cardboard and you cut out some holes from it, right? And you put it in between on your set. But is it going to be something that's durable and that's reliable, that's going to last in your studio? Maybe, depending upon obviously the materials that you use to cut that out. I also don't think I would see anybody cutting this out themselves with all these tiny little details, right? They're using some type of CNC machine. I don't know, but obviously something that's really precise to be able to get this. And I don't see somebody hand cutting this type of stuff. If you want to cramp your wrist and cut this one out by yourself, please do. But for basic gobos that are usually like a window, yes, you can absolutely make one yourself, but now you've got some versatility and you've got the durability. So let's go ahead and get a little scene set up and then we'll check them out. Okay, so here you can see the award-winning scene that we've got set up. Just kidding, it's not gonna win any awards. But what I wanted to do was just give you context. Instead of just shining light through one of the boards, I wanted to show you what it looks like in somewhat of a scene. And what I'm using right now are the duo boards. So my surface and my backdrop are both duo boards. Why are they called duo boards? Well, let me just show you real quick. One side, the other side. Duo, 2 duo boards. Now again, for context, I'm not necessarily going to push the camera in a little bit more. Let's just see the whole thing. So that way you can see the light hitting through the board. I'm gonna set that up over here. And off camera, I've got an Amaran 300C that we're gonna be using. Maybe we'll play with some color, probably just leave it at like a nice warm temperature. And then I'll use the existing key light that I've got going on right now. Maybe I'll turn off my overhead lights just so there's a little bit more drama happening. So again, we can really see the light and how it's being shaped with the shadow boards. All right, for this scene, we've got 3 that I'm gonna try out. This is the blinds, right? Maybe we'll try on both sides. Also, the tree, of course, right? We gotta use the tree in a scene like this. And the leaves, of course. This has got like a nice fall, kind of warm, homey feel. So let's throw some leaves in there. I will say this is super detailed, especially this branch right down here. It's something that I feel like if, you know, you're not really careful with, this could snap right off. This is anchored really nicely over here. Up here, it's anchored really nicely, but this one's, you know, it's got a little wiggle to it. So you want to be careful with it. I mean, be careful just like you would with anything else in your studio, right? Don't just throw stuff around. Don't do that. Don't be that person. So on the 300C, I've got a snoot connected, and really what that's gonna do is just help focus that light a little bit more. There's no lens in here, so I'm not technically focusing it, but it's narrowing it, it's making it harder. And that's really what you want when you're pushing through something like a gobo. The bigger your light, the softer your light. So if I've got a really big soft light, these shadows just kind of fall apart and they kind of turn to mush. And look at that, we've got a tree. Now, I've really got to be careful where exactly I'm putting this so that way I'm not getting unwanted shadows falling on the foreground, along with what's happening on the background. So we'll push this in a little bit closer here. So immediately, one of the things I'm noticing is that you've got a narrow window, slight pun intended, a narrow window to work with. So I'm also going to change the camera angle, lift it up, tilt it down just a little bit more so you can see more of the surface. And I'm just kind of now playing around and picking this up and just kind of moving it, and you'll see what happens here. You can kind of start to find a little bit of framing where some of it's hitting the foreground and some of it's hitting the background, just to give you an example and some ideas of how you could manipulate and use this to shape things. Or you can grab the light and move that around. And that'll also just give you an idea of what the light looks like on the surface without any shadow board. All right, I'm gonna go with the blinds this time, and immediately, a much bigger effect that's happening there. So it's finding that sweet spot. Because our scene is a little more horizontal, this might work a little bit better horizontally. So I'm grabbing the leaves, and I'm gonna set this up directly behind the blinds. Let's do some stacking, see what we get. Yeah, this is pretty cool, and you know what? You could easily kind of simulate a little bit of, tree blowing in the wind type of effect, right? If maybe you gotta shoot a little bit of video. The most important thing in photography is light, but the second most important thing is probably shadow, right? Is once you know how to manipulate the light, you then need to know how to manipulate the shadow. Once you start adding in things like negative fill, right? Where you wanna get those shadows nice and rich and dark. No different here, when you start introducing gobos, you wanna start creating shadows and depth, and you're adding just a little bit more interest to your shot than just pointing a light at it. So I'm gonna grab my phone out just to take a couple of shots, and that way what you'll be able to do is see what it looks like when it's cropped in a little bit more and maybe a little bit more of a realistic approach. So that way I can just share some of these here, and you'll see it in maybe a little bit more of a real world use case. Overall, I think these are really cool, and obviously it'll take a little bit of finessing to find how it's gonna work best for your style and your set design, but these are great. I mean, simple and effective. This is super detailed, and I'm able to just set it up and just use it. There's two more of these shadow boards that I wanna play with. One is the circles, because I just think it'll look cool. And then the one that I think most people will probably use, which is just the standard window. So let's set that up on this scene here, and then we'll play with the circles. Now, the big difference here is that the edges of the window here, you can see there's a lot more shadow that's gonna be created on those sides. So the light isn't gonna spill as much around the remainder of the scene, right? So I'm just kind of now playing with the blinds in front. I mean, you can get funky with this, right? You could stack these right next to one another, or I could put this right in front here. Yeah, these are cool. These are definitely fun to play with. So I think you get the idea of what it would look like on a scene like this. I'll snap a few more iPhone shots, but then what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up, and maybe we'll throw the light on the wall with some colors, and we'll start playing with them there. So we changed things up. We've got just a flat wall. I'll throw some circles on there, maybe some of the other ones, just to kind of see what they look like. Also, we're gonna use this. So this is gonna allow us to focus the light a little bit more. This is the Spotlight SE from Amaran, and because there's glass in here, it's going to allow us to focus and get a much sharper circle, right? You've probably seen these before, but these are new from Amaran, so definitely check these out if you're looking for something that is going to be a little bit more affordable than what they have if you don't need anything that's over 300 watts, because that's a specific call out on here. So we're going to hook that up because we got the 300C, and let's see what we get. We've got the circle set up, which you can see over there. They're giving some texture on the background, and it's interesting, but it's definitely not nearly as sharp as it would be if it was more tabletop. Again, these aren't necessarily designed to do this, but I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we played around with this? What would it look like? Really, where you're gonna get more effect is the closer you bring this to your subject. Like any gobo, right? So the closer you bring it in, the sharper it's gonna be. So this is where you're gonna get those circles really defined. For tabletop stuff, this is gonna be perfect. But if I wanted to, just create some cool, interesting texture or pattern, right? Again, with some movement, the ability to do something like this is definitely interesting. But I thought, well, you know what? This might be kind of cool to play around with and just to kind of see what else you could use it for, because ideally this is going to be designed for someone who is a tabletop product photographer. You're doing some top down, you're doing some 3/4, that kind of stuff, and you're just looking for something that's going to give a little bit more interest, a little bit more depth to your shot. So for anyone who's doing that work, highly, highly, highly recommend these. Again, super nice build quality. Watch out for the tree branches though. But if you're someone like me who doesn't just do tabletop work, you might be able to use them in some other unique, creative, and interesting ways. If you are interested in checking out the shadow boards from V-Flat World, there is a link below. That is an affiliate link, so if you purchase one, I greatly appreciate you using that. And shout out to V-Flat World for getting me hands-on with these, because these are really, really cool, and I'm glad I got to check them out, and I can't wait to start using them in more and more of my product work. And I'm curious, if you were to get one of the shadow boards, which one or multiples would you want to get? Pop a comment down below, like, subscribe, and we'll see you again here on Sharpen.